My daughter canceled my place at the Father's Day dinner table and said, "The real gift will be when you end up in a nursing home." She handed the gift to her father-in-law, tickets for a $15,000 cruise, and kicked me out. I left a feeling heartbroken at the betrayal, but at that moment, I realized that this was not the end. On Monday, I canceled her mortgage check, and now she will pay for everything. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. I straightened my best button-down shirt one more time before pushing through the glass doors of Montana Grill. The familiar weight of the photo frame in my jacket pocket reminded me why I was here. Bethany's graduation picture, from when she was 7, gap-toothed and grinning, wrapped in tissue paper like a treasure. "Table for Collins," I told the hostess, who led me through the dim restaurant with its hanging Edison bulbs and rustic wood paneling. The Tuesday evening crowd was light, mostly couples sharing quiet conversations over steaks and wine. Then I saw the table, 3-place settings, 3 chairs, Bethany and Scooter already seated, wine glasses half empty, bread basket picked clean, no space for me. "Dad, what are you doing here?" Bethany's voice carried across the dining room, sharp enough to turn heads at neighboring tables. She looked genuinely surprised, as if I'd crashed a private party. I stood there holding my jacket, feeling the photo frame's edges against my ribs. "It's Father's Day dinner, sweetheart. You invited me 3 days ago." "No, I didn't." She took a long sip of wine, her wedding ring catching the light as she set down the glass. "I specifically told you we were celebrating with family." Scooter didn't look up from his phone, thumb scrolling through whatever had captured his attention. The blue light reflected off his glasses, making him look younger than his 35 years. "I am family," I said, the words coming out quieter than I intended. "Are you?" Bethany's laugh had no warmth in it, because the real gift would be when you finally move to Sunset Manor Nursing Home, free up some resources for people who actually matter. The restaurant noise faded to a hum. I remembered our argument 3 days ago, when she'd demanded I sell the house and give her half the money, how she'd stood in Margaret's kitchen, pointing at the mortgage papers like they were evidence in a trial. "Bethany, honey, don't," she held up her hand, "just don't." That's when I saw them approaching, an older couple, the man in a navy blazer, the woman carrying a small gift bag, Scooter's parents, my replacement family. "Robert! Patricia!" Bethany's voice transformed instantly, warm honey replacing cold steel. She jumped up, embracing them both. "You made it! I was so worried about the traffic." "Wouldn't miss it," Robert said, settling into the chair that should have been mine. "Scooter's been talking about this place for weeks." Bethany reached for the elegant gift bag, her face glowing with genuine excitement. "I have something special for you both." She pulled out an envelope, hands almost trembling. "A cruise to Alaska, 2 weeks, everything included," Patricia gasped. "Bethany, this is $15,000 worth of cruise, only the best for my favorite in-laws." Bethany beamed, watching their faces light up with surprise and gratitude. Robert looked puzzled. "That's incredibly generous, Bethany. What did you get your own father?" I felt their eyes turn to me, standing there in my carefully ironed shirt, hands empty except for the small photo frame burning a hole in my pocket. "Determination," I said. Then I walked out. I didn't take the truck, couldn't. My hands were shaking too badly to grip the steering wheel, and besides, I needed the night air to clear my head. The streets of Missoula stretched before me like a memory map, each corner holding pieces of the daughter I thought I knew. The elementary school playground sat empty under the streetlights, metal swings swaying in the evening breeze. I stopped at the fence, remembering how I'd taught Bethany to pump her legs, to lean back and feel the wind in her hair. She'd been 6, maybe 7, squealing with delight every time she went higher. "Push me to the moon, Daddy! Push me to the moon!" I'd worked double shifts that summer, coming home covered in electrical dust and wire cuts, but I'd always had energy for the playground. Margaret would pack sandwiches and we'd make a family picnic, spreading an old quilt under the oak tree. 2 blocks down, the ice cream shop, where we'd celebrated every report card, every small victory. Bethany had her favorite flavor, strawberry with rainbow sprinkles, and she'd always order it with the same serious expression, like she was conducting important business. "1 scoop strawberry with rainbow sprinkles, please. And make sure you put extra sprinkles on top." The teenage years flooded back as I passed the community center. Dance lessons every Tuesday and Thursday. $60 a month I didn't have, but scraped together anyway. Bethany in her black leotard and pink tights, hair pulled back in a perfect bun, practicing pirouettes until her feet bled. I'd taken a second job those years, weekend electrical work for the hospital, just to keep up with the costs. Dance lessons, braces, college prep courses. Margaret would show me the bank statements, worried lines creasing her forehead. Jack, we can't keep this up. We'll manage, I'd say, because that's what fathers do. She's our investment in the future. The University of Montana acceptance letter had arrived on a Tuesday. I'd been rewiring the Johnson house when Margaret called, crying with joy. We'd celebrated with cheap champagne and expensive dreams, already planning how to pay for 4 years of education, second mortgage on the house, selling Margaret's wedding ring to cover the first semester, working Christmas Day for overtime pay. But every Sunday, Bethany would call, telling us about her classes, her friends, her plans. Dad, I'm learning so much. I'm going to be successful, just like you wanted. The night of Margaret's diagnosis, Bethany had driven 4 hours from Billings, still in her work clothes, clutching a bag of Margaret's favorite cookies from the bakery near campus. She'd held her mother's hand through the chemotherapy, organized medication schedules, took time off work for doctor appointments. We'll beat this, Mom. We're strong women, remember? But cancer doesn't care about strength. 3 years ago, Margaret slipped away on a Tuesday morning, Bethany and I on either side of her hospital bed. My daughter had organized everything, the funeral, the flowers, the reception at the church. She'd seemed genuinely broken, crying real tears as we lowered Margaret into the ground. Dad, we'll get through this together. Mom would want us to stay close. That lasted about 6 months. The calls became shorter, the visits less frequent. Then came the financial requests. Small at first, then growing bolder. A vacation loan, help with the wedding, suggestions that I'd downsize my life to fit her budget. When had she started rolling her eyes when I mentioned being lonely? When had she stopped asking about my health, my hobbies, my life outside of what I could provide for her? I reached my front porch, the wooden steps Margaret and I had built together, creaking under my weight. The house felt too big and too empty, just like Bethany had said. But it was also filled with 40 years of memories, and I'd be damned if I was going to let her turn me into a bank account with legs. Sitting on those steps, listening to the night sounds of Missoula, I felt something shift inside me. The hurt was still there, raw and tender, but underneath it was something harder, something that reminded me I'd been an electrician for 40 years, that I knew how to fix things when they broke. And my daughter was definitely broken, but maybe it was time to stop enabling her and start holding her accountable. I'd sleep on it, but I had a feeling tomorrow was going to be different. I woke up with Margaret's voice in my head, something she used to say when Bethany was little and threw tantrums. Actions have consequences, Jack. If you don't teach her that now, someone else will teach her later. The kitchen felt too quiet without the morning news on, but I needed silence to think. I poured coffee into Margaret's favorite mug, the one with the faded roses that Bethany had given her for Mother's Day 15 years ago, and sat at the oak table where we'd shared thousands of meals. When had everything changed? I needed to trace it back, like troubleshooting a faulty circuit. Find the break in the line. The transformation had started about 18 months ago, right after she'd begun working at Morgan Construction. Before that, she'd been a bookkeeper at a small firm downtown, making decent money, but nothing spectacular. Then Scooter's father offered her a position, and suddenly she was making twice her old salary. That's when the first request came, $5,000 for a work vacation to Las Vegas. She'd called it a loan, promised to pay it back within 3 months. I'd transferred the money without question, proud that she was doing well enough to afford luxuries. She never paid it back. When I mentioned it 6 months later, she'd laughed. Dad, that wasn't a loan, that was family helping family. The wedding expenses came next. $15,000 for the reception, $5,000 for the honeymoon, $3,000 for the photographer, all while she was planning an elaborate ceremony at the country club, complete with ice sculptures and a 7-course meal. Family supports. Family, she'd said when I'd hesitated. Mom would want you to help me have the perfect wedding, using Margaret's memory as leverage. That should have been my first real warning sign. Then came the house comments. Every visit, she'd make little observations about how much space I was wasting, how the property taxes were eating up my retirement, how I'd be so much happier in a smaller place. Think of all the money you'd save, Dad. You could travel, enjoy your golden years instead of being tied down to all this maintenance. But I'd built this house with my own hands. Margaret had picked out every paint color, every piece of furniture. This wasn't just property. It was our life together, the only place where I could still feel her presence. Last Christmas, Bethany had canceled dinner because it conflicted with Scooter's family ski trip to Aspen. She'd suggested I make friends my own age instead of depending on family for entertainment. That's when I realized I'd become an obligation instead of a father, a checkbook instead of a person. I finished my coffee and reached for the phone book. Emily Johnson's number was still there, same as it had been for 10 years. Emily had been Bethany's best friend since college, her maid of honor, practically a second daughter to Margaret and me, until 18 months ago when she'd suddenly disappeared from Bethany's life. No explanation, no goodbye, just gone. My finger hovered over the numbers. If anyone knew what had really changed my daughter, it would be Emily. She answered on the third ring. "Hello, Emily? This is Jack Collins, Bethany's father." Long pause. "Oh, hi, Mr. Collins. Is everything okay? I'd like to ask you that question. Can we meet? I need to understand what happened between you and Bethany." Another pause, longer this time. "I don't know if that's a good idea. Please. I'm trying to understand who my daughter has become, and I think you might have answers." I could hear her breathing, wrestling with something. Finally, Riverside Park, 2 hours. I'll be at the bench by the river. Thank you, Emily. "Mr. Collins, be careful. Bethany isn't the person you think she is." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, my electrician's instincts telling me I'd just found the break in the circuit. In 2 hours, I'd know exactly what had short-circuited my daughter's moral wiring, and then I'd know how to fix it. Riverside Park stretched along the Clark Fork River like a green ribbon, cottonwoods rustling in the afternoon breeze. I'd arrived 20 minutes early, needing time to settle my nerves before facing whatever Emily had to tell me. She appeared at exactly 2 o'clock, carrying a coffee cup from Daily Grind, and walking with the careful steps of someone who'd rather be anywhere else. At 30, Emily had the kind of quiet beauty that came from being genuinely kind, something I'd always appreciated about Bethany's choice in friends. "Mr. Collins." She sat down beside me, leaving careful space between us. "I wasn't sure you'd actually come. I wasn't sure you'd tell me the truth if I did. That earned me a sad smile. You always were direct. I liked that about you and Mrs. Collins." We sat in silence for a moment, watching a pair of ducks paddle along the river's edge. Emily clutched her coffee cup like a lifeline, steam rising into the cool air. "What happened between you and Bethany?" I asked. She changed. Emily's voice was barely above a whisper. "After she started working for Mr. Morgan, she became someone I didn't recognize." "Changed how?" Emily stared at the water, wrestling with something. "She started doing things. Illegal things. At work." My chest tightened. "What kind of things?" "I shouldn't be telling you this." She looked at me with genuine fear in her eyes. "If Bethany finds out, she won't hear it from me. I give you my word." Emily took a shaky breath. "She's been stealing from Morgan Construction, embezzling money through fake invoices." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "She creates invoices for supplies that were never ordered, materials that were never delivered, then she pockets the difference." I saw the documents when I visited her office last year. I tried to process this. My daughter, the bookkeeper, was a thief. "How much?" "Thousands, maybe tens of thousands. She's been doing it for over a year." "How do you know all this?" Emily's hands shook as she set down her coffee. I saw the fake invoices on her desk. When I asked about them, she laughed it off, said it was just creative accounting. But I knew what I was looking at, Mr. Collins. "I've been a bookkeeper for 8 years. You confronted her?" "I tried. I told her she needed to stop, that she was going to get caught. That's when she showed me who she really was." Emily's voice hardened. "She threatened to ruin my reputation, said she'd tell everyone I was the one stealing. She had it all planned out, how she'd make me the scapegoat if anyone got suspicious." The pieces were falling into place, the expensive gifts, the lavish lifestyle, the constant need for more money from me. Bethany hadn't been successful at work. She'd been supplementing her income with theft. "The Las Vegas trip," I said. "The wedding expenses. Stolen money. All of it." Emily wiped her eyes. I tried to stay friends with her, hoped she'd come to her senses. But she just got worse, more brazen. She started buying expensive gifts for Scooter's family, trying to buy their love with money she'd stolen. "Why didn't you report her?" Because I was scared, Emily's voice cracked. Bethany can be vindictive, Mr. Collins. She knows things about people, keeps track of weaknesses. She told me exactly how she'd destroy my career, my reputation, and I believed her. I thought about the woman who dismissed me at the restaurant, who'd suggested I belonged in a nursing home. That woman was capable of anything. I'm sorry, Emily continued. I should have been braver. I should have protected you from her. You were protecting yourself. That's human, but she's been using you, Mr. Collins. All those loans, all those requests for money. She's been living off your retirement while stealing from her employer. She doesn't need your help. She just wants it. I stood up, needing to move. The anger was building inside me, but it was a cold anger now, calculating. Emily, I need you to promise me something. What? If anyone asks, we never had this conversation. I don't want Bethany taking her revenge out on you. What are you going to do? I looked at the river, watching it flow steady and patient toward its destination. I'm going to teach my daughter about consequences. Emily stood too, studying my face. Mr. Collins, be careful. Bethany isn't just greedy. She's smart, and she's dangerous when she feels threatened. So am I. We shook hands, and I watched her walk away, shoulders hunched like she was carrying the weight of the world. Then I got in my truck and drove home, my mind already working through the possibilities. I had ammunition now, real ammunition. The question was how to use it most effectively. Bethany wanted to play games with family loyalty. She wanted to treat me like a walking ATM. Fine. Let's see how she handled it when the money stopped flowing and the consequences started. It was time to remind my daughter that actions have consequences, and I was about to become hers. Back in my home office, I sat at the wooden desk Margaret had rescued from a garage sale 20 years ago. The laptop's cracked screen corner caught the lamplight, reminding me that some things worked fine even when they looked broken. I needed to be smart about this, methodical, like troubleshooting a complex electrical system. Find the right wire, make the right connection, test the circuit. First, research. I spent an hour learning about anonymous email accounts, proxy servers, digital footprints. The internet had plenty of advice for people who needed to disappear electronically, at least temporarily. At 9 the next morning, I drove to Missoula Public Library. The computer lab was nearly empty, except for 2 college students typing papers, and an elderly woman reading news online. Perfect. I chose a terminal in the corner, created a Gmail account under the name Concerned Citizen 2025, and opened a new message to Robert Morgan Sr. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, decades of electrical work making them steadier than my nerves. Dear Mr. Morgan, I have information about financial irregularities at your company that require immediate attention. I wrote carefully, like drafting a circuit diagram, precise, factual, impossible to misinterpret. Emily's details filled the email. Specific dates from last October. Invoice manipulation techniques. Estimated amounts stolen. I mentioned the expensive purchases, the cruise tickets, designer handbags I'd seen Bethany carrying, the luxury car lease she'd somehow afforded on a bookkeeper's salary. The most damaging detail came last. These stolen funds have been used to purchase expensive gifts for your family, making you unknowing recipients of company theft. Your business reputation could be severely damaged if this fraud continues. I reread the message 3 times, checking for anything that might trace back to me. It sounded like a concerned employee, someone with inside knowledge but no personal vendetta. My finger hovered over the send button. Once I clicked this, there would be no going back. Bethany's world would begin to crumble, and she'd know someone was fighting back. At 11:04, 7 p.m., I clicked send. I drove home and poured 3 fingers of whiskey from Margaret's anniversary bottle, the one we'd been saving for something special. This seemed special enough. The response came at 6:23 a.m., waking me from uneasy sleep. My phone buzzed with an email notification. This is impossible, but I will investigate immediately. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. R. Morgan. I smiled into my coffee cup. The wheels were now in motion. The phone's shriek cut through Friday morning's peaceful silence like a fire alarm. I knew that ring. Urgent. Demanding. Designed to make me jump. Bethany's special tone. You did this. You ruined everything. Her voice was so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. High-pitched fury mixed with something else. Panic. Bethany. What are you talking about? What happened? Don't play innocent with me. She was crying and screaming simultaneously, words tumbling out in a breathless rush. I know it was you. Only you would be vindictive enough to destroy your own daughter. Sweetheart, I don't understand. I got fired yesterday. Fired? Mr. Morgan called me into his office with some anonymous email about. Uh, about. Her voice broke into sobs. I waited, letting the silence stretch. When she spoke again, the rage had returned. He had bank statements, Dad. Transaction records. He knew about invoices I'd. He knew everything. Her breathing was ragged. Someone's been watching me, following my work, documenting every single. Why would anyone think you're stealing? That's a serious accusation. Because I was stealing. The admission exploded out of her. I was taking money from the company, okay? Are you happy now? I was creating fake invoices and keeping the payments. Even expecting this confession, hearing it still felt like a punch to the chest. My daughter was a thief, not just greedy or entitled, an actual criminal. Bethany, why would you? Because I needed the money. Do you think Scooter's salary covers our lifestyle? Do you think your pathetic little checks every month were enough? Her voice turned vicious. I needed real money for real things. The cruise, the car, the gifts for people who actually matter. But stealing from your father-in-law's company? It was easy money. He never checked the books, never questioned anything. Until someone, you, decided to ruin my life. I could picture her pacing, gesticulating wildly, the way she'd done during teenage tantrums. Some things never changed. They escorted me out like a criminal, she continued, voice cracking again, everyone watching while I packed my desk in a cardboard box. Security walking behind me, like I might steal a stapler on my way out. What did Scooter say? Nothing. He said nothing the entire drive home. Just sat there like a statue while his wife got humiliated in front of his family's company. Her rage found a new target. 30 minutes of dead silence. Then he locked himself in his office and won't even look at me. Maybe he's just processing. I know it was you. Her voice dropped to a deadly whisper. You found out somehow, and you decided to get your revenge for the other night. Well, congratulations, Daddy, you won. I would never hurt my daughter. Liar! The word came out like a hiss. But if you think this is over, you're wrong. I'm going to make your life miserable. I'm going to tell everyone what kind of man you really are. By the time I'm done, you'll be sorry you were ever born. The line went dead. I set the phone down carefully, removed the mask of confused hurt I'd been wearing, and allowed myself a small smile. Phase 1 was complete. Now I just had to wait for her countermove. I didn't have to wait long. Later that afternoon, I decided to celebrate with a backyard barbecue. Nothing fancy, just burgers on the grill, and a few neighbors over to appreciate the evening. I started with Bill Thompson next door, a retired teacher who'd become a good friend since Margaret's death. Hey, Bill, you busy tonight? Thought I'd fire up the grill, maybe share a beer. Silence stretched across the phone line. Maybe not tonight, Jack. I'm busy. Strange. Bill usually jumped at any excuse to avoid his wife's cooking. I tried Sarah Chen across the street. Same uncomfortable response. The Andersons 2 houses down gave me an awkward excuse about visiting grandchildren. Something was wrong. I walked over to Bill's house, found him watering his front garden with unusual intensity. When he saw me coming, his shoulders tensed. Bill, everything okay? You seemed strange on the phone. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Jack, there are some things going around about you online. Probably nothing, but what kind of things? Bill glanced around nervously, then gestured me to follow him inside. His wife Helen was visiting her sister, leaving us alone in his cluttered living room. Someone's been posting about you on Facebook and Nextdoor. Nasty stuff. He pulled out his phone, scrolled through several screens. Look at this. The posts were from an account called Concerned Neighbor MT. Obviously fake, but designed to look local. My stomach dropped as I read the accusations. Warning about dangerous man on Pine Street. History of aggressive behavior toward women. Threatened his own wife before she died. Multiple women report inappropriate comments and following behavior at grocery stores. Owes money to half the neighborhood. Concerning behavior around young people observed. Each lie was carefully crafted to destroy my reputation without being specific enough to verify. Classic character assassination. I didn't believe it, Bill said quickly, but others are talking. Mrs. Patterson screenshotted everything before the posts got deleted this morning. My phone had been quiet all day. No return calls because people thought I was dangerous. No barbecue guests because my own daughter had painted me as a predator. Bill, come see my computer. Let me show you something. 20 minutes later, Bill was convinced. We gathered Sarah Chen, the Andersons, and Mrs. Patterson in my living room. I showed them my clean background check, character references from church, decades of community involvement. I explained carefully. My daughter is angry about family finances. This is her retaliation. Mrs. Patterson, 73 and sharp as a tack, snorted with disgust. That girl always was spoiled. I remember her teenage parties. Noise, mess, no respect for neighbors. The posts are gone now, Sarah noted, studying her phone. Deleted the account completely. Because she knew they were lies, I said, but the damage was supposed to be done. Bill shook his head. We should have known better, known you better. The Andersons, married 40 years, exchanged glances. Sometimes family hurts you worse than strangers, Mrs. Anderson said quietly. We've seen it before. By evening, we were all in my backyard with the Weber grill fired up. Neighbors bringing side dishes as originally planned. The counteroffensive had worked. But I understood now that Bethany was willing to destroy me completely. She just made this personal in a whole new way. Sarah's potato salad arrived in Margaret's old serving bowl, the blue ceramic one with hand-painted flowers that I'd lent her months ago and forgotten about. Somehow, seeing it again, surrounded by neighbors who'd chosen to believe in me, rather than anonymous online poison, made everything feel more like family than family itself had in years. Bill wheeled over his beer cooler, ice clinking against bottles. Premium stuff tonight, Jack? Figure you've earned it. Mrs. Patterson clutched a manila folder like evidence in a trial. I printed everything before she deleted it. Every lie, every fake accusation, just in case she tries again. The Andersons brought cornbread wrapped in checkered cloth, still warm from the oven. Simple gestures, but they meant more than Bethany's $15,000 cruise gifts ever had. I flipped burgers on the old Weber grill, listening to the familiar sizzle that reminded me of countless summer evenings with Margaret. The citronella candles flickered in the gathering dusk, keeping mosquitoes at bay while conversation flowed around my picnic table. Sometimes you have to protect yourself from your own family, Bill said, opening his second beer. Learned that the hard way with my brother. Drank his way through every relationship, every job, every chance I gave him. Sarah nodded. My brother was the same with money. Always needed a loan, always had an emergency. Took me years to realize I was enabling him, not helping him. Mrs. Anderson, who'd raised 4 children and buried one, spoke with quiet authority. Love means setting boundaries. If you don't teach consequences, life will teach them harder. The conversation felt like a neighborhood therapy session. Everyone sharing stories of family manipulation, financial abuse, emotional blackmail. I wasn't alone in this struggle. I'd been paying her mortgage for 3 years, I admitted, the words coming easier than expected. $2,847.50 every month. Said it was temporary help until she got established. The silence that followed was telling. Jesus, Jack, Bill muttered. That's more than my pension. Mrs. Patterson's voice sharpened. If she can afford luxury cruises, she can afford her own bills. You've been too generous, Sarah said gently. But generosity without boundaries becomes exploitation. The sun disappeared behind the mountains, leaving us in the warm glow of string lights I'd hung for Margaret's last birthday party. My neighbors' faces looked serious, concerned, supportive. Maybe it's time she learned financial responsibility, Bill suggested. I'd been thinking the same thing for days, but hearing it from people who cared about me made the decision feel less like revenge and more like necessity. Sometimes love means saying no. Sometimes it means letting people face the consequences of their choices. As neighbors packed up leftovers and said goodnight, promising to monitor social media for any new attacks, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Genuine support. These people had my back not because they owed me money or needed something from me, but because they knew my character. After cleaning up, I sat at my kitchen table with the checkbook open, looking at Monday's scheduled automatic payment to Bethany's mortgage company. 18 more months of advance payments, totaling over $50,000 she'd never asked for, never thanked me for, simply expected like a monthly allowance. If Bethany wanted to play hardball, she was about to learn who taught her how to throw. Monday morning I had a phone call to make. At 6 a.m., I sat at my kitchen table with the checkbook open, running the numbers one final time. $51,255. That's what I'd paid in advance on Bethany's mortgage. 18 months of payments at $2,047.50 each. Money that could have been my security, my emergency fund, my freedom. Instead, it had become her expectation. I arrived at First National Bank 15 minutes before opening, sitting in my truck and watching employees unlock doors, turn on lights, prepare for another day of financial transactions. The parking lot felt like a battlefield where I was about to fire the shot heard around my daughter's world. Jessica Martinez, the loan officer who'd handled my account for 5 years, recognized me immediately when I walked through the glass doors. Mr. Collins, right on time as always. Here for your regular deposit? Actually, Jessica, I need to stop the automatic payments on the Collins Morgan mortgage. Her fingers paused over the keyboard. Stop the payments? Mr. Collins, that will put the account in immediate delinquency. I understand the consequences. Jessica's professional concern kicked in. She pulled up the account, studied the screen with growing alarm. You've been current for 3 years, paid 18 months in advance. Are you experiencing financial hardship? No, I'm experiencing clarity. The paperwork took 20 minutes. Jessica warned me 3 separate times about foreclosure timelines, credit damage, potential legal consequences. Each warning felt like permission to proceed. Mr. Collins, this could affect your daughter's credit permanently. Are you absolutely certain? I thought about the cruise tickets, the designer handbags, the public humiliation at Montana Grill. My daughter made her choice. Now I'm making mine. Walking to my truck, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not vindictive, liberated. The drive home passed in contemplative silence, radio off, windows down, Montana air filling my lungs like freedom itself. Back in my driveway, I sat for 10 minutes before going inside. In 90 days, Bethany would receive her first foreclosure notice. Plenty of time to figure out solutions if she chose responsibility. Over entitlement, she had $15,000 in cruise money. She could use that for mortgage payments. That evening, I unplugged the phone and made dinner without anxiety, for the first time in months. Whatever came next, I was ready. 3 months passed like a season changing in Montana, slowly at first, then all at once. January's bitter cold gave way to March's tentative warmth, and I discovered what peace felt like. My new routine started with morning walks around the neighborhood, sometimes borrowing Rex, Bill Thompson's golden retriever, for company. I joined the library's book club, helped Sarah Chen troubleshoot her computer problems, and had weekly coffee with Mrs. Patterson, who kept me updated on neighborhood gossip with the efficiency of a small-town newspaper. I fixed the squeaky porch steps that had annoyed Margaret for years, painted the kitchen a cheerful yellow she'd always wanted, and cleaned out the garage until I could actually park the truck inside. Simple projects, but each one felt like reclaiming pieces of my life that had been held hostage by family drama. April 15th found me kneeling in Margaret's garden, planting tomatoes in the rich soil she'd spent years cultivating. The phone started ringing at 2:17 p.m. I could hear it through the open kitchen window, but I stayed focused on the seedlings. Another ring, then another. By the 4th ring, curiosity won. I wiped dirt from my hands with an old towel and walked inside, checking the caller ID. Bethany. I let it ring twice more before answering. Hello? Dad? Her voice sounded different, smaller, broken. I don't understand what happened. The bank sent a notice. What kind of notice? Foreclosure warning. The words came out choked with tears. It says payment stopped in January, but you've been paying. You always pay. I sat down at the kitchen table, still holding the towel. Have you been making the payments yourself? No, I thought you were handling it. You always handle it. Her breathing was shaky, panicked. They're saying we're $8,500 behind. How is that possible? The moment felt suspended, like standing at the edge of a cliff before jumping. I stopped making your mortgage payments in January. Silence. Complete, stunned silence. Then, you what? How could you do this to us? I decided you're old enough to handle your own responsibilities. But we don't have that money. Her voice climbed toward hysteria. The foreclosure timeline is only 60 days. Dad, they'll take our house. That's what happens when you don't pay your mortgage. This is about the restaurant, isn't it? Accusation crept into her desperation. You're punishing me for one bad night. I looked out the kitchen window at the garden where I'd been peacefully planting minutes ago. I'm not punishing anyone, Bethany. I'm just not enabling anymore. The line went quiet except for her ragged breathing. When she spoke again, her voice carried a new understanding of exactly how much trouble she was in. Dad, her voice shifted, acquiring the honey-sweet tone I remembered from teenage negotiations. I know I haven't been the daughter you deserved. Here we go. I settled back in my chair, recognizing the opening move of a familiar game. I was so stressed about work problems that night. I took it out on you unfairly. I never meant those things about the nursing home. You know that, right? Same playbook she'd used at 16 when caught sneaking out. Acknowledge wrongdoing minimally. Blame external circumstances. Promise it wasn't real. Mom would want us to work this out as family. Margaret's name hit like a slap, but I'd been expecting it. Don't bring your mother into this. But she would. She always said family sticks together through tough times. She'd want you to help me save our house. Your mother also said actions have consequences. Pause. Recalculation. New strategy. I'll visit every week. We'll have Sunday dinners again, just like when Mom was alive. I'll pay you back every penny with interest. I promise. Promises from someone who just admitted to embezzling thousands of dollars. How will you pay me back without a job? Scooter's father will hire me back once this blows over. Those accusations were just rumors from a disgruntled employee. She still couldn't admit the theft was real, even to herself. We'll have nowhere to go, Dad. Do you want your grandchildren to be homeless? You don't have children, Bethany. We're trying. We want kids, but how can we start a family without a home? The lies were getting more desperate, more elaborate. I could picture her pacing, gesticulating wildly, brain spinning through increasingly unlikely scenarios. If you don't help me, you'll never see me again. Is that what you want? To lose your only daughter forever? I haven't seen you in 3 months anyway. That stopped her cold. When she spoke again, real tears replaced manufactured ones. I'll sell the cruise tickets. That's $15,000. I'll use every penny for the mortgage. You should have thought of that before booking the cruise. Please! The word came out as a wail. I'm begging you. I'm your only daughter. I stood up, walked to the kitchen window, looked at the garden where I'd been peacefully working before this call shattered my afternoon. My daughter died the day she chose money over family. Dad, no, please don't. I hung up, immediately unplugged the phone from the wall. The silence that followed felt like benediction. Walking to the stove, I put the kettle on for tea. My hands were steady. My conscience was clear. After 40 years of marriage and 32 years of fatherhood, I'd finally learned the difference between love and enablement. 6 months later, on my 65th birthday, I sat on the front porch with morning coffee and the Missoulian newspaper. The September air carried hints of autumn, leaves just beginning their annual transformation from green to gold. A small headline in the local section caught my attention. Foreclosure spike affects local families. The article mentioned several properties, including the Collins Morgan residence on Maple Street, just a line item in someone else's story about economic hardship, but it confirmed what Mrs. Patterson had already told me through her neighborhood watch network. Bethany and Scooter had moved out in late August, loading a U-Haul with whatever furniture fit. No dramatic rescue, no last-minute family intervention, no loan modification approval. Just the natural consequences of choices finally catching up. They were living in a small apartment across town now. Bethany worked retail at Target. Scooter had found part-time construction work with a crew that wasn't owned by his father. Robert Morgan Sr. had maintained his distance after the embezzlement investigation confirmed every detail in my anonymous email. Real life, real jobs, real consequences. My own life had continued its quiet improvement. The book club introduced me to authors I'd never considered. The gardening group taught me techniques Margaret would have loved. I'd started volunteering at the animal shelter, discovering that dogs were excellent listeners and never asked for money. Linda Morrison, a widow from church, had become a coffee companion. Nothing serious yet, but pleasant conversation and shared interests in hiking and crossword puzzles. She made me laugh, and I'd forgotten how good that felt. I'd lost 15 pounds. My blood pressure had improved, and I slept through the night without anxiety dreams about family finances. The savings account that had been hemorrhaging money to Bethany's lifestyle was growing again, providing actual security instead of false guilt. Bill Thompson emerged from his house next door, coffee mug in hand. "Morning, Jack. Happy birthday, old man." "Thanks, Bill. Hard to believe 65. You did the right thing, you know. Tough love works." Mrs. Patterson appeared from across the street with characteristic directness. "That girl needed to learn life isn't free. You saved her from herself, even if she's too stubborn to see it yet." This afternoon, I'd teach basic electrical skills to teenagers at the community center. Kids who wanted to learn trades, earn honest livings, build something with their hands. Tonight, several neighbors would join me for birthday dinner, simple food shared with people who valued my company rather than my checkbook. Looking at the garden, Margaret had started, and I'd continued. I felt her approval, like morning sunshine. She would have supported my decision, understood the necessity of letting our daughter face reality. The phone rang inside, the landline I'd reconnected last month when the calls started coming from positive sources, the library, volunteer coordinators, friends making plans. I didn't jump up to answer it. These days, the phone brought connection rather than crisis, and it could wait until I finished appreciating this perfect September morning. Some gifts take time to unwrap, but justice is always worth waiting for. I raised my coffee cup in a silent toast to Margaret's memory and my own hard-earned peace. After all these years, I'd finally learned love sometimes means letting people fail, and that was the greatest gift I could give my daughter, even if she'd never understand it. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.